My name is Robin Dreeke, and I'm the founder and CEO of People Formula, a leadership and communications training company, and retired chief of the FBI's counterintelligence behavioral analysis program. With me today on the People Formula Author Study is a longtime friend and fellow behavioral analysis program team member, Jack Schafer. Jack Schafer is a psychologist, professor, intelligence consultant, and former FBI special agent. Dr. Schafer spent 15 years conducting counterintelligence and counterterrorism investigations and 7 years as a behavioral analyst for the FBI's National Security Division's Behavioral Analysis Program. He developed spy recruitment techniques, interviewed terrorists, and trained agents in the art of interrogation and persuasion. Dr. Schafer contributes online pieces for Psychology Today magazine, has authored and co-authored 6 books, and has published numerous articles in professional and popular journals. He is a professor with the School of Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice at Western Illinois University. His recent book, The Truth Detector, is a premier book and guide on the art of elicitation. Unlike many other books on lie detection and behavioral analysis, this revolutionary guide reveals the FBI-developed practice of elicitation, the field-tested technique for encouraging people to provide information they would otherwise keep secret. Now you can learn this astonishing method directly from the expert who created this technique and pioneered it for the FBI's behavioral analysis program. It is filled with easy-to-follow, accessible lessons reinforced by fascinating stories of how to put these skills into action using natural human behaviors. The Truth Detector shows you all of the tips and techniques you need to gain someone's trust and get liars to reveal the truth. I wanted to surprise you with this, because I think the most interesting thing is you and I have known each other over 20 years now.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that when we were on that other show. I thought, my gosh, it goes back 50, I've been out 16 years. I knew you 5 years before that. Oh, there it is.
And so here's the evidence of how long we've known each other. So they gave this out at our first BAP training that I went to, where you taught and had the wonderful tie. And
that was, Vince put me up to that.
I know, it's a great story. And the greatest thing is that I had Joe sign it, and then I had you sign it when I took it to our first BAP consult that we did together. And because this used to be my manual, I used to walk around with this book, when we did a BAP consult to make sure I was structuring things well. And anyway, on it says, Robin, words are the building blocks of truth and justice, Jack Schafer, and you at least dated it, 5/29/2004.
Wow.
And I came on the team in January of 2002. So.
Okay. Yeah, I remember you came on from New York.
Yep.
It took me about 2 years before I was real comfortable.
Yeah, for everyone listening, this is just not just a conversation with a great author, but one of my teacher, mentors, and guides in life. It's Jack Schafer. Joe Navarro is my other one. You two are just great friends, great mentors, great guides, and you both taught me the most important thing in life it's actually my company motto now. It's everything I do is continually learn and educate others. And if you have at least one bit of information to share with the rest of the world, shame on you for not getting it to them in any way you can. And obviously you've then taken that to the next level because, once you retired, not only consult, but you teach, continually teach. So anyway, we are here to talk about your mastery that you're phenomenal at turning a phrase and coming up with these great titles. Like when you came up with the like switch for your first book, I was like, wow, that's genius. What a genius hook point kind of moment where you came up with a title. And I remember when you're talking about doing your next book, you're thinking about what you're going to do and you're talking about doing elicitation. And now personally, I have stayed away from teaching and training elicitation because it can be a dark art. It can be used, and can be viewed manipulative, and we'll get into it. But when you came up with this title, The Truth Detector, and the way you frame it, I was like, he did it again. That is just genius. I mean, I love the concept of getting people to tell the truth before they have time to be deceptive. That was just genius. So good on you, Jack. It's great to chat. We've never done one of these. I'm going to be horrible at it. Trying to have a conversation with the Jedi Master of Conversations. But I figured this would be a good opportunity for those that don't both know you as well, and your background to kind of get a little bit of that to see where the genius comes from. But more importantly, I do want to talk about elicitation, what it is, what it isn't, and different ways to have people employ it in their life in a productive way, and also recognize people that are trying to take advantage of them as well with it. So, with that, hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Good. So, just let's kick off with a really simple question: what's elicitation?
Elicitation is the art of getting someone to reveal sensitive information without them realizing that they're revealing sensitive information. So it's merely steering a conversation and developing, uh, using human predispositions to allow people to talk freely.
And with that, it's an art form you've been doing an awful long time, because when I was listening to your books, I do everything on Audible because it's easier for me to, it's like I literally sit there listening to a Jedi Master like yourself, teaching. I literally thought I was sitting in your class again 20 years ago. And so you've been doing this a very long time, but you obviously weren't born doing this. How did you discover elicitation? Where did you discover it? When did you first actively employ it?
When we first started in the counterintelligence, when I was an FBI agent, we would have to get information from sources that sometimes we didn't know they were telling the truth or not. And if you ask somebody a direct question, many times they will not give you a direct answer. So it's a lot easier to use elicitation to get people to reveal their true feelings and thoughts. So it was based on my work with the intelligence world.
And so what did you do before the FBI?
I was a police officer and I was in the Marine Corps and I was in the Army and the Merchant Marines.
So a lifetime of government service as well. And see, Jack, all these years, I didn't even know you were a Marine as well.
I
So,
did 2 years Marine Corps Reserve after I got out of the Army.
so you decided to go to the men's club instead. Okay, very good.
Yes.
Did you discover, the use of obviously, as your police officer, you're doing a lot of interviews, most likely. Did you discover elicitation back then? Was it taught to you? Did you learn it on the job? I mean, how did it all work?
Basically, when I started working in the intelligence field, that's when I started looking around for ways to get people to give me information that's sensitive that they normally wouldn't give you under direct questioning. And with interviews in criminals, it's more of a direct response, yes or no. Uh, and there's a goal in mind, and that's a confession you have, or you think you know what the truth is, and you're trying to get to it. But with intelligence, anything can be of value
Right.
in the intelligence world. So it's best to get people to talk as much as they can, because when they talk, they tend to reveal information that sometimes they're not supposed to, and they don't realize that they're doing it.
Now I know, I mean, I received my training from you and Joe and like Chris Voss with Never Split the Difference. But was there an origin that you learned it? I mean, as I know back in the day, a lot of this stuff is just on the job training. I mean, how did you come up with your system for it?
I think it was an evolution because instinctively people know a lot of these elicitation techniques and they use them. And what you have to do then is to figure out what is that specific technique, give it a name, know the variables that go into manipulating that technique. And then once you know those things, then you can intentionally use that technique instead of relying on just instinct. You can intentionally use it as a tool. And so I think it was an evolution from I would instinctively do things and I would see other people instinctively do things and those things work. And you're like, how do they work? What's involved in that technique? So how can I intentionally use it rather than rely on just instinct? And that's what I attempted to do here is take those instinctive things that we do and break them down, identify them so we can name it.
Yeah,
And then we can intentionally use it.
Yeah, that's what I call giving it label and meaning, because then you recognize it everywhere. For me, I call it the new car effect. You buy a new car, all of a sudden you start seeing that
Yeah.
new car. And it's so funny
Yeah.
when I listen to you and I look at your content, it makes me say, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Because it's our stuff sounds so similar sometimes. Like, I thought I came up with this. I don't think I did come up with this, or maybe we came up with it independently. So it makes it a fascinating
Well, but
world.
the way I like to look at it, there's really nothing new under the sun.
Right.
And so what I try to do is go into the literature, and it's very esoteric, very pompous, and very written in where ordinary people can't read it. So what I like to do is get all that research, get all the results, and then repackage it and put it in the bottom shelf where people can read it in an attractive package. So a
Oh,
lot
good.
of the stuff I use comes from research, comes from personal experiences. And all I do is repackage it so people can understand it and use it. More importantly, use it in the field.
Absolutely. A matter of fact, and I don't know. Again, I had all these. Boy, I felt like I was having a Wayback Clock going. I had all these moments when I was reading the book. I don't know if you introduced me to this book or it was Sue Adams. Some of the other greats when it
Yeah.
comes to interviewing. But you mentioned one of my favorite books of all time, and I actually have it on my shelf. The Interrogator.
Oh, okay.
Hans Scharff. Matter of fact, I even reached out. I tried reaching out to have him come to one of our BAP training conferences, but he had already passed away. When did you discover that book, and what did that mean to you?
That when I first started getting into elicitation, I worked when I left the bureau, I got hired by a private contractor in the Beltway, and they worked with a lot of the same things we work with in the FBI and the counterintelligence world. And that's when I took a really deep dive into elicitation, and that's when I really started finding out who is like the grandfather of elicitation, or where did it come from. And everybody seems to point towards Scharf. He was that German interrogator who used non-invasive, friendly, non-threatening techniques, and he got a lot more information than the Gestapo did, who used torture and a lot of threatening techniques. So he's the kind of the person who set the whole elicitation ball rolling.
Yeah, and for those listening, it's a as Jack was saying, it's a book about this German interrogator during World War II that was interrogating Allied pilots that got shot down for intel and information, and that automatically draws up images of, like you said, the Gestapo torture kind of things. And this man was anything but that. So I love it, not just for its elicitation training techniques, but even in the darkest times and the darkest places in the world, you can still have rays of humanity that, because he did a good job just taking care of the pilots. Granted, he got a lot of information as well, but he a good human being. And you mentioned this word once already, as I want to explore this a little bit deeper, because I am hyper about this term, because if you come across this way in any way or even sense, and that's manipulation, you won't have trust, no trust, you won't get a whole lot or very far. So first of all, how do you define manipulation, and where does elicitation fall on that scale?
Well, there's two sides to elicitation. You can use it for good, and you can, like, we all want the best out of life. We want the best deals we can get. We want the best relationships we can get. We want to be able to negotiate in the business world. We want to get the best products that we can negotiate for. And a lot of that information is kind of closely held information. So if we had access to that information, we can use it for good and get the best out of life. Now, the bad side is con men use these same techniques to elicit information from people to steal their identity and steal money from them ultimately. So the just knowing these elicitation techniques and knowing how they work and what context they work, then the potential victim can recognize when they are being targeted by an elicitation by a stranger. So you can use it as a defense if you're not comfortable using elicitation techniques. At least learn them so that you won't become a victim of elicitation. So
And
there's two sides.
And so for
And
you, I know I have a couple of favorites as well. What do you think are the top, 2 to 3 techniques that people either fall victim to or that are the most effective when dealing with human beings?
I think the number one technique is the human predisposition to correct other people, because we as humans want to be right. And when we correct other people, that elevates us above the person we're correcting. So that makes us feel good because we know more than the other person that we're talking to. So that kind of elevates us. And in order to kind of prove that we're more superior, we often give out a lot of information that perhaps we shouldn't. So many of these techniques that are in the book found on that technique of the need to correct others. For example, if there's something called a presumptive, and all you want to do is you either want to make a statement, either it can be true or it can be false. And if it happens to be false, then what happens is that person feels this overwhelming need to correct you. So I can get information from you without you realizing that you're giving up information. And I'll tell you how powerful this is. I was in class at Western Illinois, where I teach university, and I was demonstrating this elicitation technique of the presumptive and the need to correct. And one of the students made a comment. She was a senior. I knew that, and I said, "Wow, that's a pretty insightful comment for a sophomore." And she just stopped, kind of gritted her teeth, kind of did a lip compression because she knew what I was doing. And then I said, "Okay, she's probably aware of what I'm doing." And then I moved on a couple sentences, and she says, "I'm a senior." I said, why did you feel the need to tell me that? She's, I couldn't let it go. I just had to correct you, and I knew what you were doing, and yet I still had to correct you. So that's how powerful that the need to correct is. So the presumptive can have a kind of a downside, because for somebody to make an intentionally incorrect statement is very difficult for many people to do, because they don't want to be wrong. So their ego kind of gets in the way of using this technique. So the number one thing with elicitation is you got to suspend your ego, because it's all about getting information from people and not you feeling good about yourself. It's about obtaining information from people.
What kind of strategies? And you're right. I mean, ego suspension is the bedrock of elicitation and all that you need to do to kind of set the stage for elicitation. Um, what advice do you have? I mean, how do people do that? How do you go about suspending your ego?
Well, you just have to realize, and I tell my students, especially the A students, they have to be, they're perfectionists. And I intentionally point out their mistakes. And then I say, "You admit that this is wrong." And they said, "Well, if I admit it, then I won't be an A student." I said, "No, the sun is going to rise in the morning. Your parents are still going to love you. Your friends are still going to like you. And you're going to be a lot less tense, because you're not always worried about being right. It's okay to admit making a mistake." So it just to demonstrate that when I'm in class and I'll misspeak, and a student will say, "Well, that's wrong." I'll think about it and go like, "Yeah, you're right. It's wrong. Let's erase it and then move on, move on to something, that works." So my advice to, with elicitation and ego suspension is, it's okay to be wrong. And it takes a lot of pressure off you, because once you're wrong and admit you're wrong, it's easy after your first admission that you did something wrong.
I imagine that's a really powerful rapport builder to do that. And that kind of gets me to, so how do you set the stage for elicitation to be, effective? Because, I imagine you can't just jive right into a conversation and use a presumptive statement to get someone to do something. Although probably sometimes you can, you got to kind of set that stage a little bit. How do you do that?
Well, what you do is when you first meet people, you can use nonverbal behaviors to let people know that you're not a threat. And there's typically three top friend signals that we have. The first one is an eyebrow flash. That's a quick up and down movement of the eyebrows. And what that does is that lets the person know that you're not a threat. So it's a long distance signal. So when you approach somebody and they're approaching you, you will exchange eyebrow flashes. So what you're doing is telling one another that we're not a threat. If that other person does not eyebrow flash, then you're going to get a weird feeling like, well, there's something a little bit wrong with that person. I better keep an eye on that person. You're not very comfortable. You don't know why, but you just get that feeling you're uncomfortable. So it only lasts about 1/64th of a second. And what you should do is don't take my word for it. Go about your business and watch for eyebrow flashes, and you'll catch yourself eyebrow flashing other people. And you'll say, oh my gosh, I never knew I did this. It's one of those kind of subliminal things that we do, or semi-conscious things that we do hundreds of times a day. And some students will come back and go like, oh my gosh, Mr. Schafer, I eyebrow flashed that guy. I said, yeah, you eyebrow flash people hundreds of times a day. All it is a friend signal. The second one is the head tilt, because when we tilt our head, we expose our carotid artery, and that's a vulnerable part of our body. So we're letting that person know, hey, we're not afraid that you're going to hurt us. And the good example I like to use with dog lovers. If you have a dog or a pet and you come home, and where they'll sit there and they'll what? Tilt their head. I don't know if you have a dog or not, but I have a dog, and the dog just sits there and goes like this and looks me in the eye. So what the dog is saying is, I'm not a threat. And sometimes they'll flip over on their back and expose their tummy, and that is that's their weakest part of their body. And they're saying, hey, I'm exposing myself because I trust you. The next thing that we can do is smile. And what a smile does is we release endorphins, and endorphins make us feel good. So if we smile, we feel good about us. And if we make somebody else smile, they feel good that we are making them smile. And that kind of taps into that golden rule of friendship. If you want people to like you, you want to make them feel good about themselves. Because if you're with somebody and you like that person and you feel good every time you're with that person, you're going to want to naturally be by that person again. And in fact, you may even think up an excuse to see that person again, just to have that same good feeling. So that's the kind of thing that you want to bring to elicitation, is when you want to talk to somebody and get sensitive information, you want to send out the right signals that say, I'm listening to you. And one way to say I'm listening to you is to use empathic statements. And that is take what that person said, use parallel language, and then mirror it back to them. So that's another way to get a good rapport. And the last major way, I think, it's common ground. And there's 3 ways that we can make common ground. And common ground is one of the quickest ways to establish rapport with somebody. And that is, the first way is contemporaneous. That means we share something the same. Like you're an FBI agent, I'm an FBI agent. We share something at the same time, so we can establish common ground quickly. Or the second thing is, if you're in the Army, I was in the Army, so that I can say over time, so temporal, over time, we have common ground. And the last thing is vicarious. We live through somebody else. Interestingly enough, car salesmen use this quite a bit. You go onto their car lot and they go, hi, how are you? What do you do for a living? Say, I'm an electrician. Car dealer can't say he's an electrician. He may never have been an electrician. He doesn't know anything about electricity, so he can't really talk about it. So what does he say? Oh, my brother's an electrician. And if the customer starts asking about, what is your brother doing? Anything about electricity? Oh, I don't know. He just comes over. When the lights go out, he comes over and fixes it. I don't know much about electricity. But what they've done is you don't have to answer questions about that occupation, and you've established common ground through somebody else. That's called vicarious common ground. So those are basically the ways when you walk up to people, you want to look for those things. And a good way to look at it is people have shirts. People have logos on their shirts. People have hats. They have jewelry. They have watches. They have all kinds of things that we can use to try to establish common ground with people.
Okay.
Like I was just saying, if you have a baseball team like the Cubs and you don't like the Cubs, but you like the Sox, what do you have in common? baseball. So you can always find that common ground with people. And that makes rapport building quicker and easier.
It sets the plate very well for the elicitation. And you mentioned in the book also the elicitation sandwich. Can you go a little bit into what that sandwich looks like and what that is?
Yeah, that's the thing, that there's something called primacy and recency. People have a tendency to remember the first things they say, hear, or do, and they have a tendency to remember the last things they hear, say, or do. So what you want to do is put your elicitation technique in the middle, or sandwich it between your beginning and your ending. So what you do basically is you start out with building rapport techniques. Oh, you're feeling good today. How are you doing? This and that. Build a little rapport. Sandwich in your elicitation technique, and then once you get the information, then you close with something that's non-threatening or very general. So if you were to ask somebody what did that person talk about, they would typically talk about the first and last things that happened. And this is typical. You ask somebody what they did on their vacation. What do they remember? Going to the vacation. They remember coming home from the vacation, but in the vacation, they have a tendency to forget what they did.
So one thing that struck me when I was reading the book was, wow, that's a lot of planning, a lot of strategizing, a lot of engagements. And so you're obviously a master of this, and people around you also know that you're a master of this. Has it ever been off-putting anyone or they get intimidated by being around you, or are they afraid you're going to get something from them, anything like that?
Yeah, I often run into that, but I tell people, I'm not working. So
That's a good way to put
I'm
it.
just having fun here, So it does sometimes play into that, but you just got to get around it.
Have you ever had an instance where you're called out on it, where someone recognized what you're doing?
Yeah, actually, what we do, you say how difficult this is. This isn't difficult, because when I trained intelligence officers, we had a 4-hour block of elicitation in the morning. And then in the afternoon, we would go out to a mall, Pentagon City Mall, if you from Washington. It's a very large shopping center. And we used to actually take the students out and assign them random targets and tell them, go get that person's date of birth, go get their computer PIN number, go get their bank account information, go get their mother's maiden name. And the students are able to accomplish those things within 3 to 5 minutes of meeting a perfect stranger. So I walked into a store because a person was having a difficult time getting, I think it was a mother's maiden name or something. And I said, well, come on in, I'll show you how to do it. So I'm halfway through this elicitation technique, and the lady looks at me and she goes, "You're trying to get my mother's maiden name, aren't you?" Or my mother's maiden name. And I says, "Well, yes, I am." And she says, "I knew it. I recognize the technique because they teach it in the sales course I took." And I said, "Well, you're right. I am practicing." I said, "How did I do?" She said, "Well, you did pretty good. And if I didn't realize that you were using that technique, I would have never known it." So that's a good example of, you can defend yourself if you know the techniques.
Absolutely. Who do you think makes the best elicitors, the worst elicitors, or does it not make a difference?
Yeah, extroverts make horrible elicitors. Not horrible, but they have to be trained. And the reason I say that is because they have a tendency to talk all the time and they don't listen. And I'll give you a good example. We had an introvert and an extrovert walk into a store, and all they had to do was get the date of birth of the clerk. That's it. That's really easy. You can do that in a minute. And the extrovert walks in, he starts talking and talking. And the clerk actually, I was there listening, and the clerk actually gave his date of birth. He told the date of birth, and then the guy walked out, the student walked out. And I said, "Well, how'd you do?" And the extrovert goes, "Man, I blew that. I didn't get the date of birth. I'm sorry. I'm going to try again." And the introvert looks at him and says, "What are you talking about? Here's his date of birth." And the introvert popped it out. And I said, "Yeah, he's right. He did give it to you." He says, "Well, how come I didn't hear it?" "Because you're too busy talking and not listening." So
Yes, and I'm laughing because yes, I am and it's funny because you had it in your book. You went through the Myers-Briggs. Yes, I am the ENTJ, and so it's taken a lifetime of training, and I still fail at it miserably.
Well, I'm an ENTP. I'm a strong extrovert, so I have that problem, and I have to be very when I do go operational and go, my objective is to elicit information. I have to monitor myself to say, shut up, don't say anything, just shut up, just shut up.
It's so funny because yeah, literally BAP consults when we do them, and for those listening, we generally assemble 3 or 4 of our behavioral analysis team members like Jack and myself, and we'd have maybe one of our operational psychs there, and we go around and we strategize human engagements and we strategize trust. And I would literally sit there with my notepad in front of me and I'd write on it, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. And I still couldn't do it
Yeah, I know.
as I
That's
am now.
that's why I think introverts make better elicitors,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
introverts have a tendency to listen to what other people say, and they tend to think about what other people say. Extroverts have a tendency to, it's like word puke. You just vomit words out, and we expect the listener to go through the vomit there to find out if there's anything of value in the word puke.
No doubt. Um, so have you ever had a moment of like sheer shock with a bit of information that you weren't expecting to get through elicitation?
Yeah, actually, what comes to mind is it's so vivid in my memory because we went into a jewelry store. I saw a jewelry store at the mall, and I told the student, "Let's go in like we're going to case the place to rob it." The guy goes, "Oh, cool. What do we need?" I said, "Well, you tell me. You need security. When does the mall cops come by? Is there a safe? How much money?" And so then it was funny. We walked in, and he's eliciting, and he's looking at jewelry. He started, "I want to buy a little trinket for my girlfriend." So he's looking at a ring. And he goes, "Wow, a lot of security in here. I see the cameras." And the guy goes, don't worry about those cameras. Those are dummy cameras. They haven't worked for years. So the guy goes, you mean I could just walk out here and there's no camera? And the guy goes, well, basically. And then he said, well, there must be security must come by every 15, 20 minutes. He goes, nah, so lazy. They don't come by, but maybe once a day. And I'm like, wow, okay. And so then the guy goes, well, at least you keep your money in a drop. Well, obviously you drop the money in a safe. He goes, yeah, but the safe's broken. And and it's over there behind the counter on the other side of the store, and it's broken. And the guy says, you mean I can walk in here and take that money and leave? He goes, yeah, if you want to. And then he says, well, how about the ring? He says, don't worry about that. That ring is under $1,200, and we don't prosecute anybody under $1,200. In fact, we don't even call the police. We just let it go. So I'm thinking, holy smokes, I could walk into that store, pick up a ring, and walk out, and nobody's going to stop me. And nobody's even going to report it to the police. So we left, and I'm in shock that that kid would release such valuable information. And I wanted to go back, and I almost did. I wanted to go back and tell him, hey, look, dude, don't give this information out. It's not good for you. But we were in an undercover intelligence operation, and I thought it'd be wiser not to reveal who we were.
So did you have any, I mean, it's such a great story and believe it or not, in this world's a kind of, I wouldn't call it typical, but people do silly things with information. Did you have any rapport building in that, or you just kind of just dove right in on looking at jewelry?
No, he walked in. It's a jewelry store. So he walked in and said, I'm looking for a ring for my girlfriend. And then he chit chats, well, she's a nice girl. And then he came out with this. He says, we don't know each other well enough to get a diamond. So I'm looking for something less than a diamond. So, he was just, and he goes, yeah, I know what you mean. You don't want to spend too much on the girl and have her, break up with you or something. And they were just chit chatting back and forth. And then all of a sudden he goes, wow, this is a nice diamond.
Nice. But how long did it take to do that?
Oh, minutes.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Minutes. I mean, the guy just, once you establish rapport with somebody, then they like you. And if they like you, then they will bend over backwards to help you.
And that just seemed like it was just a string of presumptive statements then?
Yeah, pretty much presumptive. And it was amazing. And You can use this for car dealerships. And here, I'll give you another good example with the
Great.
jewelry. I wanted to buy my wife a ring, and I wanted to see how much I could negotiate off the price of the ring. So I just walked into the store and I said, "Wow, your markup must be like what 100% on jewelry." The guy's, no, it's more closer to 30%. I said, "Well, you add your commission of 30%, and that adds to the markup." He said, "No, 30%." He says, "I get 5%." I said, "Well, you got to have discounts." He says, "Well, I'm authorized to give a 10% discount, but my supervisor, he's authorized to give up to a 20% discount." So I'm putting all the facts together, going like, now I know what to ask. And I in fact offered the 20% discount, and I got the ring for 20% off. And I got a gift wrap too. He said, "You want a gift wrap it for your wife?" I said, "Absolutely." So I got 20% off the price, and I also got it gift wrapped. So I thought I was doing pretty good. But that's how you can use elicitation.
Yeah. For good, and a better relationship with your wife is always good by buying her nice gifts.
Well, the other thing is, when you first meet somebody, you want to develop a good relationship with that person. If you're interested in developing a relationship, you can use elicitation to kind of make them feel more comfortable in telling you things. And the more intimate things that you tell other people, the closer that relationship is, because you become more vulnerable, and you realize that trust comes from that vulnerability that we share with one another, because we trust each other to protect our vulnerabilities from the outside world. So you can use elicitation techniques to help with your relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jack, what do you
So
miss? I'm sorry, go
what
ahead.
what do I miss?
Yeah, do you miss anything
in,
in the FBI?
from the FBI? Yeah, sometimes I miss uh, when I see I like complex investigations, especially in counterintelligence or espionage, like this current thing with the hacking going on with the pipeline. I
Yes,
want to
and
get in there and figure out who did it.
yeah, me too, especially since I live in Virginia. And we're affected by this.
Yeah, it's times like that I like to get involved. But for the most part, my career in the bureau has been outstanding. It's been the best I think it could have been. But I've moved on. I'm a professor now, and I teach young students. I still train for the FBI.
Oh wow, good job.
So I go like 4 or 5 times a year back to do some training, and I still go out and give talks and speeches and train police officers.
And
So
that's given back in a great way, no doubt.
yeah, so it was great experience.
What's the next book?
Uh, you know what? I don't know what I'm going to do next. I don't know. I haven't decided yet.
Anything you're tinkering with in any way?
What I'm looking at is maybe some like doing a Hemingway type thing where there's a bunch of short stories
Hmm.
of moments in the FBI.
Oh wow, yeah,
I kind of got the idea when I was reading Hemingway's volume of short stories.
right.
It might be interesting because I thought, a lot of cases we have, investigations are boring, most of the time.
Yeah,
You only have moments of excitement, and people don't want to see the boring things. They want to hear the exciting things. So I was thinking of maybe taking all the highlights of some of the bigger cases and then just presenting the highlights.
that'd be fun.
I don't know if that'll work or not. That's what I'm thinking about. I just don't think. I think you can get more done by being nice to people.
Well, that's why we came up with everything we do on a team. I mean, everything we ever did was strategize trust. Strategize how not to be manipulative, because if you don't have to be, you're going to go so much further.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that I've taken that through my life. Is
Yeah.
I always try to, the one motto I picked up along the way is when I meet somebody, I just want to make their day just that little bit better than it was before meeting me. And I think that's a good way to look at when we meet people, because then it's about making them feel good about themselves. And
Absolutely.
once you take the focus off you and put it on them, they're going to like you. And if they like you, they'll bend over backwards to help you.
Yeah. and it's the bedrock of relationships, which is the bedrock of everything. And I think it's a great transition, just closing this up, because again, when you hear anecdotally, or you meet someone like you that trains people in elicitation, which can be used for the dark arts as well as the good, the last thing people are thinking of especially when they're thinking of FBI agents and recruiting spies and national security, is that we're just trying to take care of people. It's a very altruistic way of life. And so kind of bringing it back to that, just leave people feeling better from meeting you. And that's the way to do it.
Isn't that what we're supposed to do in life?
It is, isn't it? It's kind of crazy. And it's just, and for the ENTJ, which thought life was about power, with fantastic humbling moments. And one of my first ones delivered by you, and I know I've said it a million times in different shows with you and stuff. Going through my first BAP assessment with you, which was beautiful. It was wonderful. It was exciting. And then I was assigned to do the write-up, and since you're a master word smith and author, I'm sitting in my office. I send you the report, and next thing I know, I get a phone call saying, "We need to talk." 3 hours later, and going through literally only 2 or 3 pages of writing. Yes, I've never been more humbled, but every day is another humbling day. I just pray I don't cause another one tomorrow. So Jack,
Well, that's how you learn, though. How many people have the courage to say you're wrong, especially when you write something?
It's one of my mottos is, never argue context with anyone. It serves no purpose.
No, and if you're wrong, you're wrong, and
yeah, okay.
Yeah, so what? The sun still rises. My wife still loves me. My kids love me. The sun sets, rises again the next day. So you're wrong. So what?
And one of the greatest rapport builders is the ability to have humility, humbleness, transparency, and vulnerability.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one technique I generally use when I give a presentation is initially I'll make some minor mistake in when I'm doing an introduction, or I'll mispronounce a name, or I'll use a malaprop or something, and somebody will that inevitably catch me. You did that wrong. I said, oh yeah, I guess I did. But what am I doing? When you make a mistake and it's not aimed at your credibility, you're actually letting people know you're human, and it encourages them then to participate more in the training because, well, he made a mistake. So if I make a mistake, we're even. I mean, I'm not afraid to make a mistake because he's already made one. He can't yell at me about my mistake because I just caught him at a mistake. So what that does is it erases that defense mechanism that you typically have. And I found out the more people participate in training, the more they own the training. And when it comes time for the evaluation, they're not going to say they suck because they're part of that training. They own it. So that's how you can use, that mistake technique to, endear yourself.
Jack, where can people find out more about you?
I'm typically the only thing, my wife runs my social media. So LinkedIn is probably the best way to get a hold of me. Or I'll give you my personal email. It's jackschafer500@yahoo.com.
Do you want that on the broadcast?
Yeah, that's fine. I don't mind people. That's my throwaway email.
All right. So I've been going to the throwaway email.
No, I think I gave you the other one, didn't I?
I got them both, I think.
Yeah.
I never know which one to write.
Then I got the super secret one.
And as all great interviewers, which I am not one, always, what didn't I ask you that you wish you could have said?
Yeah, the less I say, the better off I am. I found out that early.
So again, for those listening, I can't recommend more the Truth Detector. You will not find a more comprehensive guidebook, workbook on how elicitation works, how to recognize it, how to employ it. A lot of books and a lot of things out there have it as little nuggets, maybe a chapter here or there. This is hands down the most comprehensive book on elicitation you'll ever get that can be used in every single aspect of your life. So that's all I got today. Thank you, Jack.
All right. Thank you. It was fun talking to you.